source to sea. It's in and out, all it's dear. All up and leave, that's why it matters, you see. This life will be the death of you.
Welcome to Indie Tea Talks. I'm Kitty. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Adam has had to dash off today, and so I'm going to be taking you on a journey into indie music across the north of England. Tune in as we explore unique melodies, chat with talented artists, and create a space where you can discover your favourite artists like never before. In today's episode, we're thrilled to dive into a world of the Yorkshire-based artist, The Silver Reserve. Formed around the songwriting talents of Mathew Sturgess, The Silver Reserve is known locally for their beautiful fragmentary songs that slowly dismantle you. With an eclectic mix of folk, indie and experimental influences, Mathew's songwriting has captivated audiences with his DIY approach to making music and the ability to blend diverse musical styles into a cohesive sound. From recording in unconventional locations to collaborating with artists across genres, The Silver Reserve continues to push the boundaries of indie folk music while staying true to their unique artistic vision. So please join us as we welcome Mathew into the studio as we explore his journey, creative processes, and find out what's next for him. Please welcome The Silver Reserve.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello, Mathew. How
Hi,
are you
Kitty.
doing?
I'm all right, yeah. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. So first up, can you please tell us about the origins of the Silver Reserve and how it came to be a platform for your music?
I hope so. Yeah, so I've been writing songs for most of my life. Well, not most of my adult life anyway.
Yeah.
Started around the age of 16 and was writing kind of a lot of instrumental stuff inspired by post rock and that kind of stuff initially.
Nice.
And the stuff I was writing when I was 16 I still think was pretty good. I was like, I
Good, so
still
you
go back
should.
to those, and I like those tunes. Then I had a period of writing my own songs with lyrics and singing, and then I decided they were uniformly awful and didn't write for
So you
for
didn't like...
years and years, like 10 or more years. I just like left it for ages. And then when I was in my late 20s, I got a 4-track from a place of work. We're getting rid of a 4-track machine, so I kind of took that and started recording these little demos that I sent to just one mate, and he encouraged me to...
How exclusive.
Yeah, right. So so I'd send him these little bounces of these weird little 4-track experiments, and then he said, "Oh, I've got a friend who I think you could record with, and I'll record with you." And we ended up recording this little EP in a coal shed in Hull, in this guy's like outbuilding, and that formed the first kind of 4 songs, which became eventually, after 5 years of recording in various bits, became this album called Source to Sea and we named the project Rusty Bear. So we released that in 2012, got a bit of airplay from Six Music, which was great.
Lovely.
Bypassed all the introducing shows and just
Nice.
went big and sent them straight to the
We like that.
straight to the producers
awesome.
on the shows. So yeah, so it felt like there was some validation in what I was doing, I suppose.
Yeah.
And felt encouraged. And so then Mark Riley's producer emailed me and said, "Oh, tell me about this Rusty Bear project." And in that moment I felt like a fraud, because it was purely a recording project at that stage, and we'd spent years just recording. I never performed, and there wasn't really a band. It was just some friends, and we'd record this thing, and then...
It's interesting that, isn't it? It's quite... I found that through lockdown with learning how to produce, that I'm not creating songs. I'm not creating songs considering how I would ever do them live. And then when it comes to that aspect of it, you do almost feel like a fraud, because you're like, I can't do this all at once.
Yeah, so there was like one thing, and it was like had 16 part vocals and things. So I was like super into the Beach Boys at the time, so I was just like, I was insistent that I did all the singing and I wanted harmonies everywhere.
Yeah.
So it was just like, we just threw absolutely loads of stuff in there. And there was no real band, I suppose. It was just a vehicle for recording. But after I got that email, I was like, well, what if they invite me to do a session?
Yeah.
Or like, and then I got offered a gig in Manchester and had to sort of explain, well, there's not really a thing.
Yeah.
We haven't got that far yet. So the Silver Reserve was the kind of next project where I decided I'd try and form a band.
Okay.
We decided on a name change for a couple of reasons. Firstly, there were a lot of animal named bands around that era.
Okay.
So that was kind of felt a bit annoying after a while, that we had a kind of, I don't know, this animal name. And then there was also the I did a Google image search of Rusty Bear, which I hadn't thought to do when I first came up with the name, the name came from a bizarre thing, but it was my mate's dad's beer company, which was called Rusty Beer, and I just nicked that, and that's where the name came from.
Copyright.
Anyway, so we did this, I was sort of Googling myself after the album release to try and see if we'd got any press or if anyone was interested. And just, I don't want to go to explain exactly, but the Google image search was a bit disturbing and involved quite a lot of nudity and hair. So we decided we'd abandon the name.
Okay.
And then the Silver Reserve just was, we wrote like dozens and dozens of ideas for a project name, and that jumped out.
I really like the name, the Silver Reserve.
Yeah.
Not that you're sat here and I have to say it to you, but I do really like that name.
I feel like it works now that I'm greying. That so there's that connotation. I kind of like the idea of. It was kind of a self-deprecating name, really, because I like the idea of the reserves being secondary.
Yeah.
Like the reserves are on the bench or whatever, and then there's this kind of, the Silver Reserve's not as valuable as the Gold Reserve. It's not as used. I like the idea of it being this kind of treasure that was just locked away.
Yeah, like a little hidden treasure
thing that's just probably isn't going to be discovered or used by anyone, but maybe is hopefully of some kind of value. So that was the idea behind that. And that was the origins of the Silver Reserve. Was initially I formed a band around that name, and
a band specifically for performing live rather than
exactly. But we kind of, when we made the album, so that the Silver Reserve album came out in 2017, so it's been like
I was 17 then.
Right, stop doing this, Kitty. And I was old still. But in 2017, so it's been 7 years since it's kind of, this is pretty much
the Silver Reserve.
I call this the classic lineup.
Nice.
The Silver Reserve. It's just me. But it was strange because I still wasn't really playing live at the time when I wrote, and with that album, and I don't know why I did this because I never did this before, and I haven't done it since, but I just wrote all the music without any words, pretty much for that record.
Yeah.
And
I guess if you started out as an instrumentalist, though, then maybe that makes
I don't know
sense,
why
process-wise.
I think there was something in like there was always deadlines for when we were recording, and I would just be writing with a band in mind and thinking what music would work with a band.
Right. Okay.
So there was always like a little window where we're recording in 4 weeks' time. So the song wouldn't necessarily be finished, but the music I just focus on like if I can just get the music done and get a structure that I really like, then they'll come and they'll surprise me with what they add, and then I'll put the words in later. I learned the downside of this approach is that I knew nothing about how important the key that you're singing is.
Oh yes.
So I had this bunch of tracks that we'd like fleshed out, and then I start singing on them. And for some of them, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm really comfortable singing this song. And then others were just like a really bad key for my voice.
Top tip, hum along to your instrumentals.
Top tip, budding songwriters, is maybe you should try
check the key,
singing along and see if it actually works, which is why capos come in. So that I don't know that I used.
So usually, what is your writing process then? So would it not be usual for you to do an instrumental first?
No, I mean,
and what inspires you to write, or what inspires your music? I know you've said your kind of taste in music at the time you started, but do you have an inspiration that kind of triggers you to write a song, or what's your kind of process with it?
It's so varied that it's really
mine is too. We were having this when we had Laura in for a session.
It's a really difficult thing to
it's always
pin
different,
down,
isn't it?
It's quite there's some sort of strange mystery to it, I think. I mean, you can head into cliche zone really easily with this sort of question, and I want to be mindful of that. But some songs just emerge instantly, and they just seem to fall out of you, and they're usually the best ones. Yeah,
I find that
usually my favourite.
I found that actually post lockdown more so than where one day I get home, from work or from a gig, and just sit down and write a whole song, which I don't think I'd really done a lot before in one go.
I love that feeling when you like something didn't exist and then it's
there.
You're like an hour in and you've got a finished song and it's just there. I think it's a funny one. Sometimes I just write little poems and then write music parts and then just scroll through loads of notes and go, something must land with
that's mine.
The meter of this.
I get a nice little guitar twiddle and then I go, right, let's go through my notes, we'll find something that
and something will like lock into it.
Yeah,
so I've got one song called Imogen, which is about my daughter, and that was very much like that.
I've heard you play that song live. It's beautiful.
Thank you. It is a favourite, and I just wrote that, and it was just describing what had happened with, like, we were going to a swimming lesson. I'd seen this little cobweb and it was all frozen, and we got like distracted looking at that, and then we were late for a swimming lesson, and I sat by the poolside and just wrote about this cobweb and then about the swimming lesson. That was it. And that was that. I was just passing the time, really, popped it in my phone in the pocket. And then it was like a few weeks later, I came up with the guitar part. Pretty much the whole thing just emerged fairly quickly. And then and this doesn't happen often because there was no editing needed. It was just like, oh, maybe I've got something for this. And there was the fully written song, and it just
perfectly.
was like, that's the song.
Nice.
And that's quite rare, but amazing when it's a lovely feeling when that happens.
So obviously you've said you primarily operate Silver Reserve as a solo project.
Yeah, it wasn't really through choice.
Similar. Bands can kind of fizzle, can't they?
Yeah.
Musicians.
Well, lockdown killed my band. Really.
Yeah, lockdown killed my band. But how does it kind of influence your creative process compared to collaborating with a band? Do you write differently, or do you always? So when I had the band, I still wrote everything on my own in my living room, and then went to the band. Yeah,
I think the difference probably is like, when I was writing, I was imagining a band playing the songs. The approach to that writing is you're picturing parts in your head, and you
Yeah.
imagine.
So you leave a bit more space.
No, not necessarily. I think for me, I was probably. Yeah, I don't know that I'd leave. I think what I found is that when I was playing the song solo, is that I was exploring space more and leaving less out and leaning into that style, which became more what I do now.
Yeah, the kind of floaty.
Yeah, so it was more about playing less, and I was enjoying. I found that the songs that had more impact were the ones where I played less notes and just hung back a little bit and tried to play with a bit more
Have you met
nuance.
Dave Ward McLean, the Scottish man who plays in New York?
No, I don't think so.
He's
apologies if I have.
He's actually having a final gig in summer. I'll ping you a message about it, because he's very old now. I hope he hears me say that. But yeah, he has a beautiful song called Pilgrims, and he plays 2 strings on his guitar in that song, and it's so simple, the part, but it's so breathtakingly beautiful. And it is interesting, isn't it, how sometimes you can get wrapped up in, I have to write a really interesting part, or have to write really metaphorical lyrics, or you can challenge yourself with that, but sometimes simple things they really come together beautifully.
Yeah, it was a funny thing, because then so we made the album, playing those songs, I found it was more convenient to play them solo a lot of the time, because the band were dispersed all over the place.
Yeah.
So,
and
also,
driving equipment places.
It didn't make sense as well. we played one gig in Leeds. I will not name and shame the venue, but we were paid £5 for a 5-piece band.
Yeah.
And it's like divvying up the pound each.
Yeah.
So it didn't feel sustainable really in that sense either, when people are driving and things.
Yeah, so, especially if you're travelling.
So I think what I found was when I was playing the songs from the album on my own, they didn't feel that great. They just felt like they were just rubbish versions.
Yeah, that's what I feel like post EP now.
So
they feel empty when you've heard them with a band.
So I think that's why I leaned into a more sparse sound. And then when the band came back to those songs that I'd written in that style, I felt that was a really good thing.
Nice.
Because everybody went more minimal, pulled it back. It was much more kind of subtle, I think.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we didn't record any of that stuff. And then lockdown hit. And then when we reached the end of lockdown, and I was
people were in different positions.
Everybody's in a different place.
So your debut album, which we have touched upon, although debut album...
I know what you mean.
2017.
Yeah. It's a long time ago.
Obviously, that was kind of recorded during a series of short, intensive sessions. But does that kind of create a spontaneous creative energy? Can you, I don't know, kind of walk me through what approach you took to recording it independently? Because obviously,
with that album, it was I had a great bandmates, so I really trusted their instincts.
Nice, that's so important as well, isn't it?
So I remember for some of them, I would record just my classical guitar. I live in Otley in West Yorkshire, but we're recording in East Yorkshire, and I would send just the track. And I remember there was one time where I sent the song, and then I was like driving over late that day, and they were just kind of learning it and recording,
nice.
even without me there. And then I arrived at this barn where we were recording, and they were like, "This is what we've got," and they were already like excited about these bits they'd got down. And I was quite open to just it was more of a sort of democracy in terms of the arrangements and things. I often I have no musical theory, so I find it difficult to put into words what I even want. So it ends up being this kind of...
I think I touched upon this saying, when you're trying to describe, it's difficult with producers, isn't it, when you're trying to describe what you want. And I can remember saying to Tim when we were doing the EP, he was like, oh, so what kind of synth sound do you want? And it was for Whirlpool. And I was like, well, you know, like, I want it to sound Whirlpool-y. And he was like, right, okay, well, we're just going to have to sit and go through every synth on Logic until...
everyone.
But yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
Is this the Whirlpool?
It's quite nice that you trusted them enough that you could just fall into it.
You become... It's just a yes or no thing. They're like looking for you to confirm. Is this what you like? Is this the thing you want?
And if you have a good enough relationship that it can be a yes or no thing, then that's fantastic.
And often I'd like draw in a musical reference that I'd go. I mean, I was recording last week and did a similar thing where I was like, oh, I love this track by the band Girls, and you pull it up and you realise the drum pattern that you sort of have in mind is completely inappropriate for the song. But then they can go, well, maybe you're thinking of this thing about that.
And help mould it into what you are looking for. Yeah. So obviously the most important question.
Oh God.
You know what it is. If your music
Honestly.
or yourself were a flavour of tea, what would it be and why?
What kind of question is this, Kitty?
You're on Indie Tea Talks,
What
Matthew.
sort of show is this, honestly? I've been studying awkward Lou Reed interviews to prepare for this. So I'm just going to, I don't know. Wainwright has got a T at the end. I don't drink hot
Wainwright
drinks.
with a capital T.
I think I betray my Yorkshire roots by being a non-tea drinker, I'm afraid.
Wow, that's tough.
My answer is, I just don't care. Whatever you like.
Okay, well, if you don't care about tea, that's fine. You're not on Indie Tea Talks or anything.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You have your beer, which, you know, is
nice.
good enough for us. So we heard one of your lovely shorter songs during the intro. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that song? What's it called?
It's called Slow TV, and
Slow TV. I like that.
And I wrote that recently, and it was just this little guitar part, and it came together really quickly. And I was recording with. I've been trying to just record as much as possible with as many different people as possible, because I never intended there to be a 7-year gap between releases. And as I alluded to like earlier about the kind of band all fell apart, so there was like a period post COVID where I suppose I was just kind of getting over the fact that maybe we won't capture that thing that we had. So then what is this thing? What is it I'm trying to make now? So it's taken a few years to move past that and go, well, maybe it should be a solo thing. Maybe I should be trying to recapture this thing from back then, or maybe it's some sort of hybrid between the two. Because I mean, the people are willing to record the parts, but it's just but then if we're not performing it. So it's been a little bit a funny one. So this slow TV, I decided would be the comeback single, right? Because
Silver Reserve comeback.
Because it's like so low key and unassuming. So I basically recorded it on a 4-track with my friend who lives literally opposite my house. Aww. And it was recorded the day it was written. So the day it was finished. So it was like semi-written the night before, finished off in the morning when we did it. We went into a lovely space in Otley called Otley Courthouse, and a couple of hours. It was like, 2 or 3 takes, and it just captured something that I liked. And I was like, it's really low key. It's really, really short, and it's a nice way to
sometimes
say
songs
I'm still here. And
you fight to make a song longer, but sometimes they're nice. Just
it felt kind of
capturing that little moment, aren't they? Yeah. Oh, gorgeous.
So I thought it was just a nice way for me as well to come back and it not be
and
this
reintroduce
like
yourself to
big
it.
statement. It's like super way back to when I started, which was I started recording on a 4-track,
Yeah.
doing little demos like that, and it's just a way to underscore like this is a different thing now, and it can be whatever I choose it to be. So there's I'm starting to gather enough that it's looking like there's a release maybe possible, hopefully soon.
Nice.
And there's a whole mixture of like super low key things like that, and then other bigger productions with the full band and with strings and various bits and bobs. So it's starting to take shape, but it's not in the form that I imagined it would have been years ago. But I think it hopefully will be for the better.
Well, I'm sure it will be beautiful regardless. So you're going to play us another song? What song is that?
So this next song is called Orchid.
Nice. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Orchid was written for my friend Chris, who designed the only merch that I've ever had made, which there was 20 t-shirts made, and he did this amazing like illustrated design, and he's an incredible artist. Goes under the name of Stationed Observer, if you want to look him up. Stationed Observer. That's it.
On what platforms?
Wonderful. That'd be on Instagram.
Nice.
And he's incredible. And I can't really tell Chris's story for him, but he was struggling with loss, and he'd lost a friend, and I was aware that he was like suffering. And you may have had that thing where you may be scrolling through Facebook and you see someone's lost someone they love. Yeah. And you're busy, and you just kind of go, you register it, and you say, "Oh, that's sad. I'll make a point of getting in contact and checking in," and then you don't for whatever reason. Yeah. And the song was an apology, really.
Apology.
It was an apology song that I wrote to say sorry for not checking in on you. And so he's forgiven me because he liked the song. So.
Nice.
So
well, I can't wait to hear it.
Okay.
This is Orchid by the Silver Reserve.
Another stolen sun, stupid wisdom never comes. No words, the cat will catch the tongue again. Thought of you as an orchid in the gloaming eventide. There's a dark chill you'll have to ride sometimes. You got a wild imagination, can't stop your mind from running free. The cursed or blessed oscillation, where nothing's a picture you cannot see. There's a darkness in you, there's a useless in me. Your heart's a hollow drum, and I've tried, but I tied my tongue. No words, just nothing we could have done. You got a wild imagination, like endless rain that falls into the sea. If you've got a wild imagination, how come nothing's like you pictured it to be? Oh. It's a hollow drum, still here, still young. Just wait and wait and wait and wait for a new day to come.
So you have mentioned a couple of kind of influences of genres, things like that. How do you kind of incorporate these influences into your music? And also something I think I always like asking people, what do you hope for your listeners to take away from your music? Do you want them to feel a certain way, or what do you want from that?
It's going to be like my tea answer. I don't think that's for me to care about.
You don't have a specific.
I think you should be selfish with the writing and the performance of the thing, and I think if you're making the thing you want to make, then generally people. I the stuff I like is just people who are authentic, and or it feels authentic, and it feels like an expression of them as people, and it seems to match. And
so your audience would be kind of like not like-minded people, but people who take away.
I mean, before I was would do decent gigs, I'd often be playing in like pubs and doing open mics where often people would just hate it. It was just like I used to play in this place, and the woman would like just go, "Oh, I just don't like this guy. I just don't like this guy." And so, like, should I care about that? Should I like?
Yeah, you don't want to write for someone.
You can't write for everybody, can you?
Yeah, that's interesting.
So who should you write for?
It's a really interesting thing, just because I quite like asking this question, because I never write with the listener in mind. But after we spoke with Marnie Glum,
what is the listener?
Yeah, what is the listener? But I guess it's maybe makes it sound kind of too business-like to say this, but your target audience, who you would want to listen to your music.
This is probably people who are more successful than I, who would approach it in this way. And I think this is a funny thing, because we're touching on this kind of Instagram culture and this way of boxing up music.
Yeah, so, it is interesting, isn't it? Because I personally, I don't think I'd be necessarily skilled enough to write with someone in mind.
Well, I think that thing that can almost, it encourages people to pigeonhole themselves, to go, this is my brand. I mean, someone told me this. I was asking for some like advice on like, well, how do I kind of get more shows or do it? And they were saying, well, maybe you need to be like clearer on what the thing is that you're doing.
I really struggle with that. It's hard, isn't it, to
this
pinpoint.
Thing that's kind of folky, but then sometimes you'll be putting a fuzz pedal on or whatever, and there's like loopy things, and
but still, to me, that all comes under the bracket of the Silver Reserve. It's hard, isn't it? Because you don't want to narrow yourself down or limit yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting answer. I like it.
And in terms of influences, there's it's funny, that one. I don't know that I consciously think of other. I know the people I love, and like lyrically, I love David Berman, Silver Jews and Purple Mountains is an inspiration, but his albums will have like every line's better than the best line you've ever written. It's just like every one. It's just, oh God, how do you do that? It's amazing. So I have things that I look up to. Sparkle Horse is a long favourite of mine. So the whole like using the bullet mic is definitely inspired by.
I love the bullet mic. Every time I see you play, I want one.
So yeah, like that's a direct influence that I occasionally someone at a show will say, it reminds me a bit of Sparkle Horse, and I'm like,
is that always big?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Nice,
I'm pleased with that. So, but I don't think there's as that's probably the only one that I'm quite. It's quite unashamed, you know.
Yeah.
And if I'm recording, I tend to just go, "Can we put Mellotron on?" Just because there was quite a lot of Mellotron in that stuff.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
That's the
Otherwise,
only
I'm
kind
not
of
really.
direct.
It's the only conscious one. But
Yeah.
I'm sure there's loads of stuff just filters through.
Well, and also you take little snippets from each thing.
Tell you
Like
what,
you were saying earlier.
local songwriters are probably more inspirational than. So I host these nights in Otley, and I bring a lot.
Yeah,
of
they look gorgeous.
They're really lovely. I'll plug that Shadow Brewing every month. We've had Green Gardens, who I see you wearing the t-shirt of recently, and Marnie Glum, who was in your last session, is playing, and we had Chris Brain recently, and loads of really good dilettantes playing. We've loads of really, really amazing people, and I find those nights because the place, there's like room for about 25 people in this.
Yeah,
thing,
I love intimate gigs.
They're just there, and often after a show, we had Sam from The Howl and the Hum, and
he played. Was it last night in York? I missed it. I'm so sad.
But if I see a show like that, I would often take something away from that, or it'd give me a slant.
Yeah, I actually last time I saw Laura Kindlin at the Fulford Arms recently, full band. And honestly, they were astonishing. I think similarly to like what you were saying, she's found a band she really trusts, and that really shone through. And I got home, I had work early, so I left the gig early so that I could go to bed early. And instead, I got home from the gig and wrote a song, and then checked the time and was like, oh God, it's 2 a.m. What am I doing? But I do feel similarly to you in that probably you take the most inspiration from live things you see.
I think so, and I think they're working in a similar area to yourself. You know, they're like maybe playing venues that you play. That's different to like some person you know.
Yeah, and also someone who, I guess it sounds silly to say, but you can, especially for someone like ourselves who we're looking to explore the kind of live setup of things and how you can perform certain things live. And I see things all the time, like even like Laura's bassist, I think it was his bassist or the guitarist, the pedal board he had was in this amazing case that just like stacked up ready to go, and it was so practical that even things like that you take inspiration from, where you're like, wow guys, that setup was amazing, like how did you set up and pack down so quickly? And even things like that you take inspiration
there's
from.
Such a like fertile scene in the Leeds area at the moment as well, so it's just there's so much going on that's incredible. So yeah, I'd probably say currently that's mostly what I'm listening to is like local
that's
things.
That's a good answer. That's what we like.
Taking inspiration from those folks.
Nice. So you recently have been featured on Audio Jack's album Surface Tension. Can you share?
Send me that vinyl, Jamie. Still hasn't sent me a copy.
No.
I know.
Well, other than not getting a final copy, do you want to tell us a little bit about that collaboration?
There is a little tale there. So he's Audio Jack were formed in Leeds, and their very first single, which was called Robot, the Robot EP. I hope I'm getting this all right. It became the single of the year in one of these like dance magazines at the time, and sold like several thousands copies. And this was like their first ever release. And that's what he does. He's done it ever since. But I went to primary school with Jamie, so we've been friends since we were like.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
Super little, and I think he goes by James now, but he's Jamie to me, and he was quite a fan of a particular track on the Rusty Bear album that I mentioned, which was a little tape machine experiment.
Nice.
And he generally liked that album. And he put there was a song called Tape Knots, which he put on a little mixtape he did. And he got in touch because he was doing this album, this like concept album with guest vocalists, and it was like this story.
I love collaborative albums. I've really found a love for them this year.
And for that track, it was the last song on the album, and he kind of sent me this message saying, the idea is there's this couple, and they've been trapped. It's like some post-apocalyptic world, and I think they were like trapped in some underground layer or something like this, and they'd escaped and they'd made it to the beach, and there was a sunset, and the first thing they'd ever they'd ever seen like that, and it was this beautiful scene, and he asked me to write a song about that. So I'll try and, because it's a long story, but I'll try and cut this quite short. But so he sent me the track for this thing, and I recorded a vocal for it. And if I'm honest, I found the track really difficult to lock into. It was like, it was quite drifty, and it was like, I didn't know really what to sing over it. But
it's
I had these
really hard
lyrics.
with that, isn't it, with collaborative stuff, when someone sends you something and you're like, I really love it, but I don't know what to do with
Yeah,
this.
I couldn't quite find the place. So I did the vocal, and it was, I thought it was okay. Sent it off. He presented it to his label, and they rejected it. Right. So then he came back to me a few months later, and he said, I really like that vocal you'd done. So I've just deleted the track, and I've written a song around the vocal.
Oh, how interesting.
And that's how that song came about.
Wow.
The irony being, if he'd have sent me, he's going to hate me for saying this, if he'd have sent me that track that it ended up being, I might have been able to hook into it and get something a bit better. But no, it was a lovely thing, because it's like, I've known him since I was 5 or something.
Nice.
So,
that's gorgeous. I didn't realise you'd known each other since childhood. That's really sweet. So kind of delving into the world of recording, I'd quite like to hear about your unorthodox approach to recording and making music.
Unorthodox is one way of describing it.
But yeah, your kind of DIY approach to doing it. I'm really interested in that, and kind of the maybe rewards that you get from doing it that way, but also, I don't know, some challenges you might have faced doing it.
It's probably not really been a particularly conscious approach, but I think the album I was originally thought I was going to make, which I've talked about before, with the band, and I felt we got to a point where
you'd captured something.
I'd
really
like
special.
to have captured it just live,
yeah.
And then there was different opinions on how we should approach that, and anyway, pandemic comes and it doesn't happen.
Ruins everything.
So I think I had a long period of just inertia where I just was enjoying writing and performing, and that was the thing I was focused on, and I'd possibly fallen out of love with recording a little bit. And then just more recently, possibly a turning point is the little 4-track recording of Slow TV was just so simple, and had made me realise and appreciate that I'd probably been overthinking it, or thinking it has to be this big complicated thing in a studio and it all has to be perfect.
Yeah.
And actually it doesn't. It just needs to be
sometimes
something
live
you like.
recordings come out beautifully as well.
Yeah. And so more recently I just decided I would just send messages to everybody or anyone who I thought might be interested in recording, and just see what comes of it, and
nice.
Select the bits that I like, and that's kind of going right back to how the Rusty Bear album came about, which was recorded in massive churches, in coal sheds, in proper studios, and myself at home with a little tape recorder, and it was all over the place, but it kind of still hung together.
I quite like that amalgamation of things, though, because then you probably do have quite a natural product in terms of you've got very different sounds.
I think the approach is different. I mean, I liked the idea of this record that I thought I was making in my head was going to be this cohesive thing where I was going to go for the like the Green Gardens album is like you're wearing the t-shirt, but it's so cohesive and it's just so obviously all recorded around the same time, and it's just so like perfectly. I mean, it's an amazing record.
It is a great album.
And I kind of loved the idea of a cohesive thing where it's like it's got a distinctive sound, but I'm starting to let go of that a little bit and say, well, okay, it probably isn't going to be that, but so then view it more of like a mixtape approach where it's like it's just going to take you on a little funny journey through through these kind of different places and different sounds and different recording techniques, and
I like that. I'm excited to hear it all.
Different personnel as well. So
yeah,
like recorded last week, and it's all very last minute. It's just I've just done when someone can squeeze me in, or it's there's not been a particularly strategic approach to any of it. It's just been a little bit.
That's nice. So it's just come quite naturally.
Yeah, like you're in a city. Oh, I don't suppose he's free. He could put some bass on it. Is it? It's not like it's just not been very organised. It's a miracle. I think we've got anything, to be honest.
Yeah, I like that though. I like that you've not necessarily done that intentionally. It's just come quite naturally.
I'm embracing it now. It's starting to feel exciting now.
Yeah, good.
It's like, oh well, I could record with them on Tuesday and then them on Wednesday and then someone else. It doesn't need to be the same thing all the time.
Yeah. So looking ahead, what can fans expect from you? Any upcoming material? I'm a fan.
Oh, that's funny. My eldest daughter was ribbing me the other day 'cause at my pitiful Spotify listing figures.
You should see mine. But
I need to release something. I think that's so I don't know when this is going to go out, but I hope by the time this goes out that somewhere out there, Slow TV, the little 4-track thing, will already be out there.
Okay.
And there should be more stuff coming soon. I don't know what format it'll be in. I'd like to get some physical stuff made this time. But who knows?
Okay, Matthew, so you're going to play us another song now?
I am. This final song is called The Real and the Right, and if you've seen me playing any shows over the last probably few years, I've probably included this in the set. I often close with it, partly because it's easier to play, so I can relax into it, and it's kind of a story song.
Nice.
It describes a period in my life from probably 20 odd years ago, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. Can't wait to hear it.
May have looked lost, like an old rowboat, drifted long off course into the open sea. I felt so calm and still before it crashed, like I could see beyond what lay before me. I'm lost right here. Come in close, watch me disappear. Thought I knew time so well, like a dear old friend, tying all loose ends. My mind's a carousel, but I'd fallen out of place and out of step, just too unwell to be able to tell. Put on my silver coat as the snow it fell. I thought, oh my God, was that me as well? I'm lost right here. Come in close, watch me disappear. Give me strength so I can hear. Give me tongue so I can taste. Give me sense so I can tell all the real and the right. After the smoke had cleared and the phlegm from my chest, they said all you need is a good night's rest. But I'd fallen deeper than that, and I was changed for good in a world of ways I've never understood.
So Matthew, thank you for that track.
You're welcome.
Finally, where can listeners connect with you, stay updated on your latest projects, that kind of thing?
Just the usual spots. Facebook at the Silver Reserve, Instagram at Silver Reserve, and we're also updating the website, so that should be on there.
Perfect.
Too soon.
Awesome. So that wraps up another episode of Indie Tea Talks. Obviously, a huge thank you to Matthew, and always you too, George. Big thank you to our cameraman.
Thanks.
Please remember to follow us and subscribe for more indie tunes and conversations. Follow us on Instagram at indieteatalk_ for all the latest content and information. But until next time, keep sipping, keep listening, and enjoy the magic of independent music. Cheers!